Penguin Random House Audio presents The Incendiaries by R.O. Kwon. Read for you by Keong Sim. At the bottom of everything, there is the Hallelujah. Clarice Lispector, Agua Viva. 1. Will. They'd have gathered on a rooftop in Knoxhurst to watch the explosion. Platt Hall, I think, 11 floors up. I know his ego, and he'd have picked the tallest point he could. So often I've imagined how they felt, waiting. With 6 minutes left, the slant light of dusk reddened the high old spires of the college, the level gables of its surrounding town. They poured festive wine into big-bellied glasses. Hands shaking, they laughed. She would sit apart from this reveling group, cross-legged on the roof's west ledge. 3 minutes to go. 2, 1. The Phipps building fell, smoke-plumed, the breath of God. Silence followed, then the group's shouts of triumph. Wine glasses clashed together, flashing martial light. He sang the first bars of the Jeja Psalm. Others soon joined in. Carillon bells chimed, distant birds blowing white, strewn like dandelion tufts, an outsized wish. It must have been then that John Leal came to her side. In his bare feet, he closed his arm around her shoulders. She flinched, looking up at him. I can imagine how he'd have tightened his hold, telling her she'd done well, though before long it would be time to act again, to do a little more. But this is where I start having trouble, Phoebe. Buildings fell, people died. You once told me I hadn't even tried to understand. So here I am, trying. 2. John Leal. Once John Leal left Knoxhurst, halfway through his last term of college. He drifted until he ended up in Yanji, China. In this city, adjacent to North Korea, he began working with an activist group that smuggled Korean refugees toward asylum in Seoul. He'd found his life's work, he thought. Instead, he was kidnapped by North Korean agents, spirited across the border, and thrown into a prison camp outside of Pyongyang. In the stories he later told the group, he said the Gulag brutalities were bad enough, but at least they'd been expected. What astonished him was the allegiance his fellow inmates showed toward the lunatic despot whose policies had installed them in their cells. They'd been jailed because, they'd splashed a drop of tea on his newsprint portrait. A neighbor claimed to have overheard them whistling a South Korean pop song. Punished for absurdities, they still maintained that the beloved sovereign, a divine being, couldn't be to blame. At first, he assumed this was lip service, the prisoners afraid to say otherwise. But then he thought of the refugees he'd met in Yanji, how they talked of loving the God they'd fled. They attributed the regime's troubles to anyone but the sole person in charge. A month into John Leal's time in the Gulag, prison guards held an optional foot race. The prize, a framed icon of the despot. In the confusion, those who fell were trampled. One child died of a broken spine. Through howls of pain, he shouted hosannas for his Lord. They weren't lying, the poor fools. They believed in the man as one might believe in Jesus Christ. Some people needed leading. In or out of the Gulag, they craved faith. But think if the tyrant had been as upright as his disciples trusted him to be. The heights he'd have achieved if he loved them, if, John Leal thought, until his idea began. 3. Phoebe. I hoped I'd be a piano genius, Phoebe told the group in the first Jeja confession she tried giving. She'd have sat in the circle, holding a kid-skin journal. Though I'd driven Phoebe here, I was outside, going home. It's a mistake. I should have stayed, but I didn't. Instead, I'll add what details I can. The full lips, spit-polished. She licked them, tense. I'm striving to picture it, Phoebe talking. The the thin, long-fingered hands folded tight. She looked down, inhaled. "But I didn't just wait," she said. I wanted to work for it. I spilled time into the piano as I'd have put cash in a bank. I saw full concert halls in the future, solo recitals, front-page plaudits. I practiced Liszt while imagined spotlights gilded the living room. Recollection is half invention, but it feels as though I spent my entire childhood training to prove I was the significant pianist I believed I'd be. So I piled up trophies. It wasn't enough. The teacher flicked my hands with a rod each time I didn't hit the right note, but I didn't mind. My ambition outstripped his. Let my hands swell. I could use the extra span. Bright-knuckled, I tried again. The months ticked past, then years. I kept lists of rivals. I indexed others' exploits by age. Kiel, at 5, had given his first recital to the Danish king. Ori, 11, debuted at Carnegie Hall. Liu, 15. One night, my teacher called Libich's Etude No. 5 the most challenging piece a soloist might attempt. It's eluded the finest pianists, he said. I rushed to find the Etude score. I learned it alone, in secret. I memorized Libich's high trills. I flailed through wild ostinatos. Once, at the table, my mother asked what I was smiling about. "Heijin," she said. I blinked, Libich vibrating in my head. I don't... She laughed. "It's all right," she said. I ate while she peeled a white peach. The skin dropped in a single coil. She picked it up, holding it to the light. "Such a rich hue," she said. It flushed pink, backlit. I nodded. Then she put it down. I could tell she wished to talk, but I was lost in trills. I pushed a last peach slice in my mouth, and I went back to the piano. Until then, nothing I played had evoked the Orphic singing I knew to be possible. It was an ideal I lacked the skill to bring to life. Each first-place prize marked a point where I'd let the music down. With Libich, I failed less. His etude asked so much of me that, at times, I'd forget I had an I. I should have learned, from this, that playing had to be birthed in a place without ego, in which I didn't exist except as the living conduit, Libich's medium. But then, when I showed the teacher what I could do, he was astonished. I'd achieved more than he'd hoped, he said. He switched the piece in for the next competition, a city-level open. I was driven to the recital hall. The sun fell on my hands as I practiced Libich again, fingers dancing across my legs. Spotlit, I listened to the traffic sing my name. The lax blue of L.A., heat-rippled, veiled the horizon. Like curtains, I thought, poised to rise. 4. Will. I first met Phoebe in a house full of strangers, 5 weeks into the Edwards fall term. I was new to the Knoxhurst school, but a sophomore, a late arrival. I'd transferred in from the Bible college I'd had to leave, and I was often on my own. Then one night, while I was taking a walk alone, I noticed a loud throng of students turning into a gate. It was left propped open. I followed them in. Hip-hop pulsed, rolled. Pale limbs shone. I'd learned that the alcohol table was the one place where I could stand without looking too isolated, and I was idling at my usual station, finishing a third drink, when a girl in a striped dress tripped. She spilled cold liquid down my leg. She shouted apologies, then a name. Phoebe Lynn. "Will Kendall," I said, also in a shout. We tried talking, but I kept mishearing what she said. Phoebe started tilting her pelvis from side to side. Life as a juvenile born again hadn't put me on a lot of dance floors. Uncertain, I followed the girl's lead. She swayed left, right, bare shoulders sliding. Others writhed to the frenzied tempo, but Phoebe's hips beat out a slowed-down song. Punch-stained red cups split underfoot.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?